Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you joining us from wherever you are around the world. This is the 28th edition of the International Total Video Consumption Study. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Louise Eklund and I will be your host, of course, for today. This is the second year that I have the pleasure of accompanying the RTL AdConnect team for this event. So let's get started with our 2021 Key Facts TV show. Over the next 90 minutes, our mission will be to give you insights that will help you to get more out of the coming year. For this, you can, of course, count on the expertise of the RTL AdConnect team, starting with Daniel Bischoff, Chief Marketing and Operating Officer, who will detail, of course, the trends in terms of content, video consumption habits and investments. Jean-Baptiste Maudieu will give us a clear vision through figures and precise data. And we will also hear from many other guests. I'm thinking of Nico Hoffman, President of UFA Production, but also Karen Nelson, Field CEO of Amplified Intelligence, and Samantha Glynn, Senior Vice President, Global Branded Entertainment at Fremantle, among others, of course. So now to launch this 2021 edition, I'd like to welcome RTL AdConnect's CEO, Stéphane Courrouble. Hello, Stéphane. How are you doing? Really nice to see you again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 TV Key Fact edition. So nice to see you, Louise. It's been a while, sure. And I haven't seen you in live. So finally, in a really nice setting here after such a long time.
We're back together again.
Yes.
We're in a period of uncertainty, Stéphane.
Yes, indeed. We are in a period of uncertainty, and after all that we've been through, I think it's important that we restart. And I've been talking to my team last week in the US and to some key players and key partners over there. And what I can tell you is basically the US are starting very, very strongly at the moment. And I really believe this is going to happen also here in Europe. And that's what we are here for today, sure. To look at the lessons of the past and basically try to rethink and rebuild better and even stronger for the future.
So each of the editions of the TV Key Facts study is really led by a big idea. So what is the big idea this time?
We called it this year Restart. And we're going to cover today in this presentation three main topics. The first is how to rethink the way our consumers watch our content. The second is how to restart our advertising within this advertising business accordingly. And the third part is how to recapture growth in this new environment.
We're seeing a transformation, right?
Yeah, sure. It's about transformation, and we're seeing a transformation across the whole ecosystem, from the advertisers to the consumers. Again, when I talk to my team in the US and here also in Europe, we see a lot of changes coming up, changes in consumption habits. We have new technology available. We have new players entering the market. We have new acronyms, ATV, CTV, OTT, SASO, MASO. Oh my God, so many acronyms. And basically everything is about data, it's about identity, and it's about cross-screen measurement. But besides those business KPIs, I think there are plenty of other topics that are emerging, especially from the consumer's point of view, such as climate change, sustainability, or corporate social responsibility.
So as an industry, we really have to adapt to these trends, right?
Yes, indeed. We have to adapt as an industry. It's really, really important. And you will see over the course of this presentation, we will tackle all those hot topics within the TV Key Fact. So how do we restart? How do we generate responsible growth? And how do we combine branding, performance, but also those new topics about corporate social responsibility? This is what we're going to learn today.
Yeah, we're going to go into detail about all of these different subjects. I remember last year the cover of the TV Key Facts magazine was really stunning, beautiful. And here again, it's really great. I mean, maybe you can tell us the story behind it?
Yeah, sure. And like every year, we're trying to to innovate as well, and in terms of graphics and on the cover of a magazine. And this year, we tried to cover the restart topic, and we have asked a French artist called Etienne de la Tour to do that, and he has based his artwork on an allegory of Botticelli's rebirth of Venus, which is a symbol of the Renaissance, of rebirth, of a new way. And basically, that's what is this Venus, this futuristic Venus of the TV Key Fact is all about. And this futuristic Venus is evolving in a very modern and tech-oriented world. And basically, she is pushing forward innovation and sustainability at the same time.
Fantastic cover, and well done to the artist, of course.
Thank you.
So this is the 28th edition, as I said earlier, and obviously the study has evolved a lot over the last 28 years. So what is TV Key Facts today?
Well, TV Key Fact is multifaceted, as you were mentioning, and here I have to slide and take this book or this magazine, because this is a device, a physical device that we bring together. Plenty of information, plenty of insights, and again this year we have asked contributors from around the world to give us information, from sociologists to scientists to renowned experts of the industry, to give their feedback about and give their lessons of the past and try to give us some trends about the future. The second thing about the TV Key Fact, it's not only a book, it's also a website and a database where you will find articles all year long, and also all the different figures that you will see during the presentation. And finally, the TV Key Fact is a great event. This is what we're here today in a fantastic setting again, where we are gathering experts from the industry. We take the time to share and to debate over the big topics of the industry of the moment.
Stéphane, thanks so much. I'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Daniel, Jean-Baptiste, come and join me. Join me on stage. How are you doing, guys? Nice to see you. You're my core duo here. And you're back on stage ready to share on trends and business perspectives, reinforced, of course, by facts and figures over there. Daniel, first of all, how are you doing?
Super well. It's great to be here. Finally in person. Last year we did it over video, so it's great to be here.
Yeah, and you, Jean-Baptiste?
Well, Louise, it's a pleasure to be here with you again.
Great. So this year we're going to talk about a renewal which impacts, of course, customers' habits, or consumers' habits, should I say, their concerns, their interests and their desires. This will obviously be transforming the business on a day-to-day basis. So how can we explain this change, Daniel?
That's the exact right question that we want to answer today. This change, this disruption that really hit our industry in the last 2 years is something that is really more of a disruption to all consumers and all customers out there. So in order to understand and answer your question about how we can act upon this change, we need to understand what is happening on the consumer side, what is happening with all those individuals around the globe. And once we can understand that, we can find some insights and derive some actions for our industry. And that's why I'm very happy today to introduce our first guest to the virtual stage, Richard Shotton, an absolute expert in behavioral science, a best-selling author, and who will give us some more background on behavior of consumers.
Fantastic. Mr. Shotton is with us, of course. Thanks for being here today. You're going to be giving us the keys to understanding this change that we've all perceived, but we can't really explain yet. We were just saying, Richard, that everybody's life was kind of disrupted, obviously, over the past 2 years. What has this crisis actually changed from a behavioral point of view? Tell us.
The disruption of the crisis is important because it destabilises our habits. An awful lot of consumer behaviour is habitual. Essentially, customers have too many decisions to make every single day. So rather than weigh up all their purchases, they often just default back to what they did in a similar situation. So they repeat their behaviour. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a problem if you want to win a new customer, because how do you win a new customer if people aren't even weighing up the merits of your brand versus what they currently do? But psychologists don't just describe the problem of habit, they also have identified predictable moments when these habits are weakened. And what they have found is that if someone's environment is destabilized, for example, if someone undergoes a life event, they get married, they get divorced, they move house, their behavior in all sorts of completely unrelated ways, really broad ways, their behavior changes. It's much more likely to change. So I think this is interesting because COVID is very much like a life event. Lockdown, the release of lockdown,
Sure.
It destabilizes people's environment. And because habits rely on a particular environment, it means that people are much more open to change than they have been previously.
Okay. So do we have real scientific evidence, facts and figures proving that life events impact on buying habits? I want the figures there, Richard.
That's a really good point. Behavioural science isn't based on speculation. There's genuine facts and evidence here. So two studies worth mentioning. The first one is mine. In 2017, I surveyed 2,370 people, and I asked them if they'd undergone a life event in the last 12 months, and they ticked the ones that applied. And then later on, I asked them if they'd changed the brand that they bought in various categories. And when I crossed those two bits of data, I saw that people were about 2.5 times more likely to try new brands if they had undergone a life event in the last year. And crucially, it wasn't just relevant life events that affected relevant categories. This was much, much broader. So that's the first bit of evidence. The second bit of evidence comes from Catherine Milkman, a psychologist at Wharton. And she looked at a variety of search terms, things like start a diet, quit smoking, start the gym. And she found for all these bundles of search terms, there were pronounced spikes at the start of new time periods. Yeah. So yes, if we get divorced or moved house or start university, but also smaller time periods, the start of a week, the start of a month, the start of a year, after our birthdays, after holidays. For all these moments, there was a pronounced spike in the likelihood of people changing their behaviour.
What would be your recommendation for brands, Richard, in these times of change? What would you say to them today?
Well, if COVID is akin to a life event, what it suggests is that over the next 12 to 18 months, we would expect an unprecedented degree of churn in consumers' buying behaviour. So as a marketer, you have an opportunity, a rare opportunity to win market share. So I would recommend that you should be at least maintaining your spend or increasing it because you want to be on the right side of this churn, not the wrong side.
Start to the programme.
Awesome.
Richard, thanks so much for being with us today. Thanks for all that great advice. Perfect. So Daniel, maybe you could give us an overview to start with of what's going to be happening today.
We really want to continue in the spirit of Richard and talk about the fundamentals of this change to help advertisers and agencies to understand what is really happening out there. By doing 3 things. First of all, we want to provide real facts about the change and the actual status of consumer media consumption. So advertisers and agencies can rethink how they connect to consumers best. Secondly, we want to give context and insights about what is happening in this new media world, so advertisers and agencies can restart their media strategies and thinking about where to invest the money. And finally, we want to really show how our media business has evolved and changed over the last 2 years, so agencies and advertisers can choose the right partners in order to get the best value out of their investments.
Mm-hmm. So first up, these changes have brought you to rethink the total video landscape and the way we watch videos, of course. So let's start with our first chapter, We Rethink. And we will unfold this first chapter with facts, because it's facts and figures, of course, that are still our best allies in these times of change. Right, JB?
Yes, as always, our advertising value chain starts from the perspective of the end customer, in this case, the consumer. And understanding the way this consumer behaves is really the key to advertising success. But as Richard mentioned, our behavior as consumers, it changed drastically with COVID. So having a strong factual basis is a key to rethink the way video is consumed and advertise accordingly.
Okay, so what is the new normal concerning total video, Jean-Baptiste?
Well, let's look at a first evidence that we have. First of all, we can say that we are in a super high supply situation concerning the time we spend with video. 2020 was clearly a peak because of all the time we spend at home. But if we are looking further into the new normal or the back to normal, we see that the amount of time we will spend with video in the future is still more than what it was back in 2019. So that's the first evidence. If we go to the second evidence, it's an acceleration of the diversity of video types that we are watching. And this diversity is expanding towards more video types, but there's a local factor to this fragmentation, because not every country experiments the same fragmentation at the same pace. It's very strong in the UK, it's less strong in Italy for the moment.
Okay, so consumption has peaked, the formats are more diverse. However, linear television is still the main actor in a lot of countries.
Exactly, the majority of our video time is still made with television. If you look at a worldwide average, we are talking about 3 hours nearly per person per day of linear television. And it went up in every region of the world in 2020. In Europe, for example, we are nearly at 4 hours. The only region where it declined is the North America. Why? Because there was a huge issue in measurement in the US. So the reality behind this figure might be quite different. And when we talked last year together, Louise, we tried to, let's say, guess the relationship between the lockdown measure, the COVID, and the television viewing time. And we found that it was a very, very tight relationship. And looking at the data, it's pretty clear that lockdown measures have an influence on the viewing time. In April 2020, it was huge. In November 2020, it was huge again.
Okay. But I guess, as we mentioned last year, the situation was exceptional and strongly modified our habits. So can we really talk about a new trend?
Well, to try to guess the trend, we have to look at more recent data, fresher data. Mm-hmm. And we compared Q2 2021 with the 2 previous years. And of course, 2021 in terms of lockdown, it's, let's say, lighter than 2020. So the viewing time is down compared to 2020. But if you compare it to 2019, then it's up in most European countries. Germany, Italy, France, Netherlands, Belgium, they are all up in their viewing time. And behind that, we think that there's a really structural reason behind this resilient uplift of viewing time. That's what we call the new life of the living room effect. Well, let me give you a quick explanation. We had to spend a lot of time at home. And so we wanted to make our home more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And it shows in some figures. For example, let's take the turnover of a major Swedish furniture retailer.
IKEA.
Well, yes, IKEA, they did a record year in 2020, 42 billion euros. Mm-hmm. And remember, they had their stores closed. They had their outlet closed. So we think everybody kind of refurbished their home.
Okay, and of course, in the middle of those living rooms, there's always a television, right?
Yeah, you can see it here. And we think the television is, of course, maybe the one thing you will think about first when you're refurbishing your home. Mm-hmm. And the rates of equipment of television have gone up, especially the ones in connected television, because now, if you purchase a television set nowadays, there's a 95% chance that it's going to be connectable. It was already the case in the US, where 2/3 of the TV are connected, and we are now reaching a very interesting tipping point in Europe, because we are at roughly 50% of the households equipped with connected TV. Can be very different from one country to another. Again, the local factor between Germany and Portugal, but we see now a majority of connected TVs. The thing about connected TV is you can have one, but you might not connect it. You might not use the connected figures. You can just use it to watch TV. Mm-hmm. But the second finding about the lockdown is that more and more people started to really connect their TV and to use the connected figures. If you take the example for the UK, the COVID drove nearly 3 million people to use the connected feeders of their smart TV on a monthly basis. And the trend will go up and up in the future.
Isn't smart television a bit of a gadget? Is it really a game changer?
Definitely, it is a game changer for video because in the US, at least, smart televisions are the number one screens for streaming video, and it's going up and up. It's even more than smartphone, and we are truly thinking that Europe will follow the same path in the near future. Mm-hmm. But then, with this new CTV-driven ecosystem, there's a real challenge for video content providers, whether they are traditional linear TV channels or streaming platforms. You have to emerge because the offer is getting huge. And to emerge, you have two ways of emerging. First, you have to emerge on the device because the remote control, it's looking nothing like it used to be with the numbers. No, you have to emerge on this remote control. And the second one on the device is the home page, because when you light up a smart TV, you will have tons of video providers appearing. So you better appear on top. The second way is to have the right content. It's all about the exclusive content that will drive people to your platform. And I can tell you this content, it costs a bit. So the question is, how are the different video content providers competing in the streaming wars?
Okay, so during the lockdown, the television became our window, of course, to the world. The news shows and channels really performed with record-breaking audience figures, but it was more than that.
Yes, we think during the lockdown, traditional TV had a clear advantage because it is the place for information, live events, and entertainment. And these were all boosted by the need of conviviality and community we had when we were apart. And it's really shown in the ratings of 2020. Let's say first because, well, TV is the place for information, as I said. It's immediate, unfiltered information. And during exceptional moments, you need this information. The lockdown announcement, for example, it was followed by 75% of the Europeans on TV. We see huge ratings in every country. This is an extreme example, but you can bet that every time a huge event is happening, people will follow it on television. And secondly, it's not just about the lockdown, it's also about the campfire moments that television is offering for the whole family, because it has this light, funny, nice entertainment that you can watch in your living room with your kids, with your parents, with everyone. And looking at the ratings of entertainment in 2020, we see a clear uplift, plus 21% of entertainment in the top programs across 120 territories. And the channels, they developed some very, very nice content back then. Masked Singer was a hit all around the world, but also some fun and lighter programs like Lego Masters, Marble Mania, that all perform super nicely.
Yeah, so we've all seen one of these shows, at least, I think.
Yeah, and very recently, the Germans, they revamped a variety show from the 80s called Wetten, Das. How many viewers? 14 million viewers. So it's all about being all together in the living room again.
Okay, so let's now take a look at a medley of some of the most successful entertainment shows. Here we go. So live events and entertainment are two of the original strengths of television, and now other actors are really wanting to get involved.
Yes. Beyond their inner competition, the streaming services are also competing for television audience. and they are no longer looking into fiction or documentaries as they used to do back in the days. They are hunting for sports rights, for example. You know, Amazon, they purchased the tennis rights or the football rights, and they're also doing more and more entertainment. Fremantle produced a very, let's say, traditional type of reality TV competition for Netflix that was called Too Hot to Handle.
Yeah.
But it's also the other way around. The traditional TV players, they are going for the streaming audience by producing the super high-end local fiction that makes the success of this streaming platform. I have an easy example from RTL. They are producing a very nice Sisi, Princess Sisi, you know, the Australian princess, for their VOD platforms to try to get back the streaming audience onto their channels.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, the forces are aligned between linear television and SVOD. Each one is trying to conquer the other's content territory, just like fiction on television. And how is the fiction industry doing at the moment?
Well, in fiction, I can tell you there's an evergreen trend. Is that the qualitative local fiction will always perform the best on our channels. Mm-hmm. It can be true for very long-running crime shows. For example, in Germany, there's a series called Tatort, or Montalbano in Italy, or even Capitaine Marlowe in France. But you have also some very strong and qualitative event drama, like DES, that was broadcasted on ITV in the UK and that ranked first in the charts.
And of course, the streamer.
Well, the streamers, they understood this trend of local fiction and how strong it can be. And I think we all have this example in mind when talking about Netflix. They did their best success ever in terms of series with The Squid Game, which is not coming out of Hollywood. The Squid Game is a South Korean show that was rejected during 10 years, and it's the biggest success ever in terms of fiction for Netflix.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. So fiction is, of course, high-on-demand content and has been for a few years now. It's no longer exclusive to big film companies. So how does one go about standing out in this kind of context? Let's get some more insight with an actor that has definitely changed the German television landscape and received, of course, many awards for his achievements over the years. He's a director and a producer with one of the most powerful production companies in Germany, leader on the European market for fiction. His name is Nico Hoffmann, and he is CEO of UFA Group. Nico, it's over to you.
In the last 5 years, when I was running UFA, the whole landscape of television production really changed quite tremendously. I would say we have a lot more streaming offers at the moment. We have all the big players here on the market, and we still have a very, very strong public television. And we have a very strong private TV in Germany. So we are producing not only for Germany, but all the competition is really coming from the US, from France, from the UK. And though changed the company, I would say we are much more younger at the moment, much more women. We also have a big diversity team. So things are really changing like society is changing. The energy to change things is really coming from the people working with us. We are a very diverse community in UFA in all places, not only in the question where people are coming from, also in the question of sexual identity. We had a diversity agenda that was put on the market last summer. We got a lot of criticism because directors complained that there would be control over content, but it's not about control over content. It's really to say we should and we must change our way to cast people, to write our scripts, to be more diverse in front and behind the cameras. UFA is still very strong on the domestic market. We still have revenues from nearly 50% only from domestic programs. As in the last 2 years, you have a much more bigger appetite from the big streaming platforms. So I think that will change in the next 3 to 5 years. You really have to mind if you're producing for big streaming platforms or if you produce for German domestic linear or public television. That's a big difference. It's a question of taste. I would say I know my audience here in Germany very well. But it's really tricky at the moment because you must have a very clear decision if you produce on a very high-end level for streaming or if you produce for a bigger scale of audience for the public television. My feeling is that the bigger platforms like Netflix and other companies, they really try to take the best talent from the domestic market. What we are facing at the moment is really a war of talents. And it's a lot of money going on in the market. So bigger streaming platforms from the US can really put a lot of money to the market and to the talent. So we are in a big competition. I'm pretty sure you have to protect local content. And I think a country where you can see that it works out very well is France. France has a really, really very strong cultural background. It's an awareness that they have to protect their own artistic communities in France. And for Germany, I think it should be the same.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Hoffmann, for being with us today. Jean-Baptiste, this is content that requires a lot of investment.
Exactly, and I think Nico Hoffmann clearly expressed it. There's a lot of money at the moment in the market because spotting the hidden gems of exclusive content for your platform, it looks a bit like mining gold. To win the game, you have to make sure you invest a ton of money up front. And when I talk about tons of money, I'm talking double-digit billion dollars. Okay. So all the major American players, they are spending to get the best of content. Latest, Amazon, for example, they just spent $8.5 million to acquire James Bond rights through the MGM takeover.
Okay, but does this content investment automatically generate opportunities for advertisers?
Well, not really. From the advertiser point of view, all this content investment doesn't convert into, let's say, an advertisable audience. The business model, they are not the same. If you take a Netflix, for example, they monetize all their content through the subscription. It's 100% of their turnover. If you go to an actor with a more mixed model, Disney, for example, they are monetizing through advertising, yes, but also through merchandising and a bit for subscription. And if I take the last example of a free-to-air broadcaster, like we are at RTL, we offer advertising to monetize our content. So we offer this audience to the advertisers. However, we think that in the future, financing content only through subscription will be difficult. Because if you look at the amount of VOD players that count on subscription on the European market, for example, at the moment it's a lot. We have 16 SVOD players per market. And in France, it's skyrocketing. It's 34 SVOD services in France. So harder to monetize your audience also because, the consumers, they have a limited amount of money they can pay for VOD. And we see that a fraction of these viewers, but we think it will go up, are ready to switch from pure SVOD, so funded by subscription, to platforms that are offering advertising in exchange for free content.
Mm-hmm. This is an opportunity then?
Yeah, it's an opportunity for both the people that produce content to create some AVOD platform and for advertisers to capture a new kind of audience.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing with us this new reality. Stay with us because I'm going to need you a little bit later on for some more facts and figures if you don't mind. So TV is more than ever at the heart of our living rooms and of course our lives. It maintains its essential federating role despite the content battle. And in this context, you as advertisers have a lot of opportunities and we're going to see how you in advertising can actually restart. So, Daniel, you're back with us. You're going to talk us and walk us through the second part of this show and of the report, of course. So, from what we've just seen, there are new opportunities, new actors to consider, and we've come to advertisers' favourite question here. Where should I invest? And I guess the answer is not that simple.
I sincerely hope that after this presentation, after they watched the TV key facts of this year, they know better where to invest. But more seriously, it's a tough question. It's not that simple. And as we saw with Jean-Baptiste earlier, the explosion of consumption and the fragmentation is not equally to an explosion of advertising opportunities, right? So I'm very happy to introduce our second expert to this virtual stage that can help us to understand more the investment landscape and investment perspective. Brian Wieser, a global president of business intelligence at GroupM.
Let's take a look.
I think the main difference now versus last year is I don't think we could possibly have imagined just how strong and how healthy the advertising economy is around the world. We knew 2021 was going to be a good year. We just didn't know how spectacular a year it was going to be for advertising. The change in demand for advertising inventory by consumers does not lead to a change in demand by advertisers. The two are not necessarily related at all. Marketers who want to understand what the opportunities are to engage with consumers need to be aware of how consumer usage of media is changing. It should inform the budgeting that they have. But at the end of the day, the relationship between media consumption across channels and advertising is very loose at best. Lessons learned about how to make the use of each media owner is something that can probably be very efficiently applied globally. And yes, there are going to be different consumer patterns in different countries, but it may very well be that the better you are at using a given platform, it just overwhelms the differences between consumer behaviors in countries. And so you could argue that an increasingly global orientation in media planning and media trading can make a lot of sense for marketers who themselves are organized at a global level. The overwhelming trend, certainly as we see it, is that the US-based media owners are increasingly going to be the dominant players in television around the world, certainly in Europe. And certainly those who are ad-supported or who have advertising-supported properties may end up offering very similar packages in countries across Europe. And it may be that figuring out how to make use of the streaming platforms will benefit marketers who organize their spending at a multinational, if not global level. There is a very strong relationship, we believe, between share of spending on content and share of viewing by consumers.
So no surprise there when we take into consideration the fragmentation of total video consumption, but for an advertiser, it doesn't make the decision any easier. How does one actually navigate, Daniel?
Exactly. So as Brian was pointing out, it's super crucial, super important to understand the customer journey, to understand how the consumer comes from media touchpoint to media touchpoint. Mm-hmm. In order to do that, you need to have a robust framework of measuring it, right? You need to have the right proxies, you need to have the right way of doing that. You need to also take into consideration the KPI and the weighting of the KPIs. So if you want to master this new media world, it's really about measuring it.
Mm-hmm. I remember that last year, Stefan Lorca, president of WFA, talked about the urgent need for a unified measurement. And you, Jean-Baptiste, you explained the stakes of such a project. Where are we at today?
Well, yes, this concern of measurement was indeed expressed by the World Federation of Advertisers. It's also very present in the day-to-day conversation we have with advertisers. They want all media measured under one roof with the same KPI. And I can tell you, nobody is standing still on this topic. All the different countries are making progress towards this measurement. Let me take a few examples. C-Flight in the UK is an initiative that measures broadcaster VOD and television under one roof. In Germany, there's a project called Follow the Campaign that will measure most of the media owners, including Google and Facebook, with the same contact touchpoints. In Spain, Atresmedia developed Video Advertising Reach, which is a tool that helps them to measure all their video properties within a single measurement with the duplication of reach and frequency. And the Dutch market is merging all of these media panels to measure all the media under one roof. So we are progressing there.
We're progressing, but we don't have the ideal solution yet. At the same time, there are other paths to explore that could improve the relevance of these measurements. Maybe you could explain that to us, Danielle?
We want to explain this change in order to show where the opportunities for influencing consumer behavior are for advertisers, right? So we need to understand that all of the metrics we put out there, they are proxies of trying to come close to that moment where the consumer is in the supermarket and picks your product instead of the product of your competition. So the question is really, do we have the right framework and the right metrics to measure this? Do we have the right proxies? And I'm very happy to introduce another expert to the stage now that is a real pioneer in rethinking this measurement framework and putting one currency above all that all the advertisers should pay attention on, and that is attention.
Okay.
So welcome to the stage, Karen Nelson-Field, CEO of Amplified Intelligence, to help us to understand a bit more about the metric of attention.
Okay, let's take a look.
Firstly, let me say that the metrics we are currently using to trade media are not relevant. And the reality is we have a currency problem. And the relative value of one impression over another can't be quantified. And we know this because even in our own data, viewability metrics tell us little of a human, whether a human's viewed. But B, we can see that around 20% of the impressions in our data that are even considered MRC viewable have in fact no attention paid at all. So as I said, we believe that viewability metrics tell us very little of whether humans had any attention paid. We've been validating it for years, mainly through exposure and virtual shopping experiments, so test and control virtual shopping experiment. But in the last 12 months in particular, we've got many live cases of data usage that we can report on. In particular, there was one in Ireland that they've actually won an award off the back of this. It's a very, very large gaming industry brand. And what they did is they optimized their upcoming media plan with attention data, which gained them about 35% increase in active attention compared to the original. And what they found was the outcome of that was that it delivered uplift in their distinctive brand asset score by about 9%. So this is the biggest brand in the category. So you know that it's hard to move brand metrics when you're big. So that was pretty exciting. And the other one I can report on was an Indian brand that's just launched in Australia called Cars24, which is essentially a Cars Online kind of brand. And they adjusted their media plan and then went on to record publicly what they said were seismic shifts in outcomes. And in particular, the CMO said best month, best day sales results. Some of the points I will kind of give you are make sure you ask for human data, not viewability dressed up as attention. Make sure that the vendor has collected the data in real, not realistic platforms. Demand accuracy, granularity, rigor around the gaze models, and make sure you check for privacy-safe solutions. So, we need to be ethical leaders. I have a very strong position on this. We have one shot to make change here. The attention economy is a playground for bad metrics and misinformation. So make sure that we get this right, because otherwise we'll bring confusion and hesitancy for change. I believe we will see critical mass adoption. I believe we're close. Next year, I believe all holding co's will have adopted attention strategies in some degree, whether it's in planning or buying, while the long tail of independents will be at the beginning of their journey. I also think that the vendors will sort of start to find their own niche. Some will land in audience measurement, some will land in brand creative. But what I do know is that more investment in technology will flow from venture capital firms and possibly some acquisitions. So I think next year is going to be a huge year on moving the metrics towards attention.
And a special thanks again to Dr. Karen Nelson. It's really exciting. You can get a lot more details in our magazine, of course, the Key Facts magazine. So this theory can be applied in total video landscape. Jean-Baptiste, I'm sure you have some figures, again, regarding how attention can be maintained.
Yes, because even within video, not all platforms draw the same attention. And this is what Karen Nelson-Field mentioned as gaze models. You use eye tracking and head tracking to see where the attention is going on different video platforms. And this is an example from the Netherlands. They realized that you notice more ads in VOD than you notice in TV, than you notice in YouTube. And why is this important? Because attention is directly linked to action. The more ads you notice, the more you are likely to take action. And there's another human-centric measure that we can look at. It's emotions, because if you're able to trigger emotions with your commercial, well, then you're able to engage people and make them remind your commercial and evaluate you better in your choice. And how do you measure emotions? In general, well, it's not very sexy. You put electrodes on their brains to measure their brain activity, and you see the emotional peaks that they are going through while watching ads in the different video platforms. And it's not about creating a tons of emotions, but rather about putting the viewers into the sweet spot, the sweet emotional spot that will allow them to proceed the information you're giving in your ads. So it's not about being too boring, where they are not engaged and they don't react to your ads. It's over them, and you don't want to overwhelm them. Be too emotional and they are not able to proceed the information anymore.
And why is it important to take into account the emotion from non-advertising content?
So in general, audiovisual content, audiovisual media is the most effective way to trigger human emotions. And if the content is triggering the right set of emotion, it can lay a powerful foundation for advertisers to tap into. We have a great example here from our sister company, M6, which provided this lovely studio today. And what they did is they asked viewers of the hit show Farmer Wants a Wife, after they watched the show, which immediate action would you like to take? And a stunning 94% actually said they want to buy more homegrown, more local products. Mm-hmm. So what we sometimes brush off as soft KPIs like mood, like emotion, is actually a pretty straight way into the hearts and also the shopping minds of consumers.
Mm-hmm. So we humans are first and foremost emotional beings, that's for sure. Is this a trend that confirms in our consumption choices?
Well, we're still conscious animals, right? I would say a little bit sometimes. So whenever we engage in a situation where we're buying a product, we have this little evaluation phase of the brand that is behind that product. Now, in addition to being a conscious animal, we're also pretty lazy animals. So we don't go the scientific route and try to check every KPI, but rather we try to find the shortcut. Does this brand fit to me? And this shortcut is another proxy that human beings use to identify the fit. And it's about the values. The evaluation is really about the values of the brand. And in our study on brands and responsibility, we asked 1,000 respondents in our 4 core European markets how important is the values of a brand for you when buying a product. And a stunning 3/4 of the respondents actually said it's very important to me what kind of values this brand has in order for me to buy that product. Now, this has been confirmed recently by a study from Ipsos, where they looked at which kind of values are actually the ones consumers most relate to. And it comes down to 2, which is sustainability and fairness. Mm-hmm. And that's why brands need to think and talk and understand this very big word currently in the room, which is?
Purpose?
Purpose, exactly. Mm-hmm. Because the values of a brand are really the DNA of its purpose.
Okay, so let's take a look now from the advertiser's point of view on brand purpose with the CEO for WFA, Stefan Lorca. Here we go.
The industry is looking at a very busy and urgent agenda of change. It can appear as a very long list of challenges, but I think they all deserve our full attention. So the first one, and I start with that one on purpose, is climate change. Climate change is no doubt going to be the mother of all battles. It is going to be the single most important societal issue that we as a society, we as citizens, we as marketeers will be exposed to. Number one for me is climate change. Number two is the diversity and inclusion challenge. There is ample evidence that we are lagging as an industry. We are not where the society is expecting us to be. We have a lot of work to do there. So diversity and inclusion is a very important issue for us going forward. The climate change agenda is going to be central in the months to come. We need chief marketing officers to champion the agenda internally. This is reflecting a significant change in the environment, and it is the role of CMOs, it is the role of marketing to bring the outside in for the company to adjust to this new environment and to identify opportunities in order to be growing in that new environment. WFA has launched the Planet Pledge in April this year, and that Planet Pledge is built on a commitment. It asks chief marketing officers to commit to get their supply chain partners, so agencies and other consultants and partners who work with brands, to be doing the same. It also commits CMOs to upskill marketing teams. There's a lot of work to be done for marketing teams to fully appreciate the implications of the climate change agenda. And finally, it looks at identifying best practice cases where marketing is actually a force for transformation, where marketing actually gets consumers to change their behavior in a manner that becomes more sustainable. There is no such thing as a global consumer. It doesn't exist. There are only local consumers. And consumers are citizens, no? They are people. They are not consumers, 2 hours a day. No, they are citizens, they are consumers at the same time. And so for brands to be relevant and connecting with those people, they need to be close to their constraints and they need to be close to their aspirations. It's an interesting perspective to see actually a theme, diversity and inclusion, so making sure that our society and our brands, the way our brands reflect society, appear as more diverse and more inclusive than they have in the past, but the pain points or the perceived pain points aren't the same depending on the countries in which you live. Yeah? Chief marketing officers are determined to make the current digital ecosystem more accountable than it is currently.
So thanks again to Stefan Lorca for all this great information. Danielle, the value carried by the brands can also benefit from the context effect. That's what we were talking about earlier.
Of course, I mean, the content can really set the stage where brand purpose and values tap into. And this can create extraordinary benefits to advertisers. And it goes way beyond the topic of sustainability. So let's have a look at a great example here from the brand Zalando, which in its current Zero Types campaign is addressing the topic of diversity head on, whilst at the same moment or at the same time on the content side, more and more special programs, formats get the center stage in television. So here two things come together, the context and the advertising match. Now, in a recently updated study by Integral Ad Science, they found that if the context matches to the advertising in a very good way, it can increase the ad call dramatically by 27% on the long run.
Okay, on the subject of the environment, for example, brands were really attacked in the beginning when they started to get involved. They were accused of greenwashing. Isn't there such a thing as woke washing? Does it exist?
Well, you know, in the golden ages of advertising agencies, the Mad Men ages, right? You had the McCann Group building the sentence which describes advertising, I think, pretty well today as well.
Yeah.
And it's called The Truth Well Told. Now, if you're a brand and you advocate values that are rooted nowhere, that are not anywhere within your products or your companies, you better stay away from it, right?
Makes sense.
But on the other hand, there are things going on also behind the scenes, behind the visible ads, where brands and agencies really walk the walk. So this is a great example from the US. Based on the Black Lives Matter movement, Byron Allen, founder and CEO of AMG Entertainment Network, started the first ever Black Media Upfront. And agencies committed 5% of their budgets to Black-owned media properties. Now, these 5% in the US, that's $15 billion. So here you can see there's a real commitment to a topic, to the values of those brands.
Okay, so this is really a great initiative. Could you see this kind of thing coming to Europe?
Well, historically, culturally, Europe is a different place than the US. But yes, we do see some great initiatives behind the scenes happening all over Europe, whether it's talking about a green GRP, carbon neutrality. It's really a new world with new players emerging, with new topics emerging every day. And we're all running in the same directions. Media owners, brands, agencies, we want to thrive in this new world and we want to recapture growth together.
And that's what we're going to see together right now, of course. Let's move on to the last part of this show. And the last chapter is called, of course, Recapture. So Daniel, if you were to give us in a nutshell the stakes of this chapter, what are the challenges that will have to be met to recapture growth?
It's all about value creation in this chapter. And for us as a media company, it's really about creating value on the one hand for advertisers and brands so they can connect to consumers. But on the other hand, as we saw with Jean-Baptiste, it's also about creating value for the consumers by creating great content. So at the end of the day, for advertisers in this chapter, it's all about which partners do I work with, which platforms do I have to be on, and how do I connect best with consumers and create value out of my investments.
So earlier when we were talking about measurement solutions, we mentioned, of course, Facebook and Google's place in the market. Obviously, we know the power of these giants in our everyday lives. But what is the impact on the advertising market?
Let's put this in a bit of a perspective.
Okay.
By 2023, two companies will receive over 50% of the global digital ad spends. Now, the big question here is, this accumulation of investment into two companies, does that create value for the whole market? Is there a space for others to create and obtain value in this market?
So this idea of value creation, what does it actually mean for Europe?
So let's be honest here, we're all for-profit organizations and we can learn some valuable lessons from those digital giants. So first of all, it's about platform-centric thinking, right? And the necessity to create content at scale because consumers are looking for it. On the other hand, advertisers, they need a simple way to connect to them. They need a simple way to access this inventory. And what we're seeing in Europe now is that we believe there's a way of creating value for the market and serving the consumers by creating what we call national media champions. Now, as you can see, lifetime or lifelong competitors in all different markets across Europe are coming together to form these national media champions. Whether it's here in France, TF1 and M6, or in the Netherlands, RTL Netherlands and Talpa, they are building these national media champions to create value in the market. And it goes beyond just broadcast and video champions. In Germany, we have currently RTL merging with Gruner + Jahr, building a true total media, cross-media champion with print, TV, digital, and even audio.
Mm-hmm. So how will these alliances change your advertisers' journey?
Yeah, great question. So concretely, we see three dimensions of added value that these national media champions will bring to the market, but also and foremost to advertisers and agencies. And here's the first one. By simplifying the way advertisers can access this inventory. A great example from our sister company SmartClip, who just currently announced the joint venture with the global DSP platform Amobi. Now the idea here is really to bring the best of two worlds together, to build a kind of a luxury department store on the supply side where advertisers can find the biggest and best video brands out there, to combining it with a very simplified access point on the demand side. Think of it like the black Amex card for an advertiser that would allow them to go to the department store and spend big time on it.
Okay, so simplification is the first added value of National Media Champs. What's next?
Well, there's no bigger word than innovation. I think in our media space, innovation is really something that we hear all the time. But these National Media Champions will help us really to scale media innovations across Europe. A very great topic or example for this is actually addressable TV, something everybody is talking about. But if you look at it very deeply from an advertiser point of view or an agency point of view, you see it's a very fragmented market. There are very different ways of accessing the inventory, technological differences, differences in what kind of inventory is being used. And we believe that National Media Champions will really help to scale this topic up, to harmonize the market, to offer a consistent product across the core markets in Europe, and help addressable TV to reach its full potential. And if we talk about potential for this topic, we look at a market like Germany, where we're estimating a 10-fold increase by the year 2025.
Okay, so we have simplification, we have innovation. Any more? Tell me more, tell me more.
Of course, there's always a holy trinity of added value. So finally, we believe that National Media Champions will really be the enabler for local creativity. And we saw it earlier in the part of Jean-Baptiste. Content is really at the core of, or is the platform for advertisers to connect to consumers. And these National Media Champions, they will have the means, as we saw already, it's a big dollar game, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have the power and the means to create this content. So they will be the ones who can invest into local content, local creativity, local production. And as an example, RTL will invest 600 million euros alone in the year 2026 for original local streaming content. And more content on the local basis also means more possibilities for advertisers to tap into that via things like branded entertainment, sponsorships, or any non-classical ways of advertising.
Okay, and to give us a little bit more, there's a video that we'd like to show you of the launch of RTL Plus in Germany. Take a look.
Du musst dir den Respekt am Hofe erst verdienen, Elisabeth. Mach uns keine Schande. Du weißt, was du tun musst.
Franz, bitte bleib bei mir.
It's now time to welcome another of our guests to talk about the opportunities of local content. She's Senior Vice President, Global Branded Entertainment at Fremantle, Samantha Glynn. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you doing?
I'm all right. It's very exciting to be here on stage with all these people. Thank you for having me.
Bit intimidating as well, right? So from a brand integration perspective, how will the mergers and alliances happening in the market benefit brands? We were talking about it earlier.
It can only be a good thing, I hope. Once you merge different companies, then there should be more opportunities and more chances of engagement. So if it's a bigger company, then hopefully we can access global solutions, and we can bring brands in with their big pan-regional pots, and we hope they're going to spend them rather than their local pots, which makes everything much more cost-effective for them and creatively much more interesting for us. I'm also hoping we'll have access to more platforms and more different solutions. So it might be their linear broadcast, it might be their BVOD, it might be their O&O sites or their social and digital media. But having more toys to play with offers more solutions, and whether that is traditional sponsorship or brand integrations or different partnerships that happen on air, off air, digitally, merchandise and promotional materials are taking a big rise at the moment, then I think the market can only grow.
Mm-hmm. We've seen huge investments in content creation at the moment. Is it going to allow brands to be more creative in their content partnerships?
I hope so. Again, you can tell I'm an optimist, can't you? Look, where brands want to be is where their customers are. So whether that's on a big, shiny floor linear show like Got Talent or X Factor or Idol, and for us, brands are still flocking to those shows and we're doing some amazing integrations, or whether it's on an SVOD platform, and as we've discussed already today, that's a little bit more tricky, but there are ways around it, then brands will find a way to get there. So what we're seeing is some interesting new models appearing. The documentary model is an interesting one because you'll get a brand and they'll very lightly fund a documentary. It'll just be presented by the brand. That documentary may go to a film festival, got loads of PR value around it, and then it'll be acquired by a streamer. So if we look historically, there was a great film called Lo and Behold, financed by NetScout, and that ended up on Netflix. A couple of years ago, Johnson & Johnson did a film called 5B, and again, that premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. It won at Cannes Lions, and now you can see it on Amazon Prime, and you can also see it on many linear platforms around the world who've acquired it. So that's the way that brands have found of getting a presence on these SVOD platforms. And we're seeing, creatively, we're seeing lots of different genres. So we're also seeing lots of reality shows still. Another one that's ended up on Amazon is called The Beer Masters, and that was funded by AB InBev. So, they're getting out there, and scripted. So we've all seen the latest Bond movie, which has got brands galore in it. Yeah. Soap operas around the world have brands integrated in them. And a new thing that I've seen two fantastic examples of recently is animation. So if you see Prince and Peppernos, that was funded by Samsung. It's a beautiful little film. And then The Simpsons with Balenciaga. Now, if you haven't watched that, watch it. It's on YouTube, so it's not on a traditional channel, but it takes an amazing piece of IP, which is The Simpsons, and integrates Balenciaga in with such finesse and humour, and it's so authentic and mocks the French just brilliantly.
We all love a bit of mocking the French, don't we? How did the brand integration market actually evolve with COVID and the lockdown and everything? I mean, I guess things have changed there. Creative solutions come out of this difficult period.
Oh, you take me back in time. Those dark, dark days at the beginning. At the very beginning, the interesting thing that happened was the broadcasters ran out of money for commissioning. And so all the producers were calling me up and saying, so-and-so has a slot for us at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. We need 50% of the money from a brand. So that was quite interesting and opening up the door to branded entertainment and making it much more legitimate. And so we were going to brands and helping co-finance very traditional TV projects with brands. So that was exciting. We saw some brands freeze with fear and horror that they just didn't know what to do. But the ones that did act, and we've discussed this already, did so with the P word, purpose. So a brand who had... Your favourite word today?
Yeah, it is Daniel's favourite word today.
Brands that had something to say during COVID, who had helped society or made a difference or realised that they had a new voice that had been opened up by the world talking about women's rights or about key workers. Content was really the best way for them to communicate these stories. A 30-second ad was never going to cut it, but a documentary or a drama or some longer form piece of content really helped them drive those messages home. So that was a really interesting turnaround.
From an international perspective now, can you make brand partnerships consistent?
I would advise against it.
Oh, really?
No,
Okay.
well, it's the same as we were talking about, that people want local content. And so, yes, you can have a great big master idea, and it might play out internationally. Look at Squid Game. But it also works when you can make something localized. So Fremantle's business model has been about creating one format and making it in lots of different versions. So Got Talent has been in over 70 different territories. And it's the same format, but it's the nuance of it matches the territory in where it's broadcast. So I think that's really important for brands as well, that you talk to the local audience, take that central creative idea, but execute it slightly differently so it matches the marketing values of the brand in that particular country, that it accesses their particular talent relationships, that we're compliant, because of course it's very different broadcasting something in the UK than in the US in terms of what you can show on screen, and also budgets. So some countries have got big budgets and some have very, very tiny budgets. So we have to work with those different parameters and adjust accordingly to give the right branded entertainment solution.
Okay, thanks for all this great information. Would you like to comment?
Great content is really at the core, at the heart of any connection between advertisers and consumers. So, and that's why we also think these national media champions will have the means to invest into great content and to enable these connections inside the content for advertisers and consumers.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for being with us on the set today. It was really interesting, and I'm going to let you head back to London, so I know you're heading back tonight. Thanks again, Samantha.
Thanks.
So we're coming to the end of this presentation. Of course, this was only a glimpse of what you can see in our TV Key Facts magazine. Daniel, as always, I think you delivered a really interesting, exciting show here today. If you had to sum up and give us your major takeaways, what would they be?
Sure. I think we can agree that today was really a fact-packed, fast-paced ride through our total video reality, I would say. If I had to sum it up in one sentence, it would be, I do believe we live in a new golden era of advertising, a lot of opportunities, a lot of potential out there. If you keep some essentials in mind that we tried to convey today with all of the experts, with Jean-Baptiste on stage.
Thanks so much, Danielle. Thank you as well to Jean-Baptiste, who's somewhere around here in the wings. And it's now time to invite Stéphane Korrubel on stage because he has a last message for you. Stéphane, welcome back. Maybe a few words to conclude?
So many compelling information so far. And maybe one more thing. It's about the social role of media. And to be honest, studies have shown over the pandemic that being alone, being less socially active, I would say, as some of us may have lived during the pandemic or during the lockdown, can have an impact on the way you see time. On one hand, time can feel super long or super stretch when you're getting bored or you don't have anything to do. On the other side, when you have so many things to do, you are full of stuff, time can fly. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, you kind of lose your sense of time and as your internal clock is being disturbed. Mm-hmm. We saw today, again, that something we realized during the pandemic is that we were looking for familiarities. We were looking to set up schedule for all of us, to set up a daily routine in order to give us a little bit of sanity, a little bit of structure. And in that sense, I think the role of television was very important. It acted as a clock, as a matter of fact, in its capacity to unite and to bring people together around collective moments that we could all share together physically or together being apart in some sense.
Maybe we could just have a last word about the future, the opportunities and the challenges, Stéphane.
Yes, indeed, and thank you very much. I believe the ongoing industry transformation is pushing us, publishers, broadcasters, to be more innovative, to bring ideas, to bring simplification to the industry. And I think in the future we will have to form more alliances in order to fight against a common enemy, a common threats, without saying the global giants. And all of this will result in opportunities for the advertisers to make sure their brand is resonating even better and even more to their consumers. So before ending this event, I would like to thank everyone, of course, to thank all our speakers, the contributors that were on stage or that contributed to the book. I would also like to say a big thank you to my team at RTL at Connect, and especially the marketing team, the communication team, and the production team for having us in this fantastic setup. Of course, I urge you, for those who are watching us today, to go on the website, TV Key Facts, to check what it's all about, to check the articles, and to look at the database. And one more thing again, I would like to thank you, especially Louise, for moderating this event.
Thank you so much, Stéphane. Thanks to Danielle, Jean-Baptiste, all the teams that had a really great time preparing all this great information for you guys. It was absolutely fantastic. This is the end of the 28th edition of the TV Key Facts. You can find, obviously, as I said earlier, the complete study in our magazine. You'll be receiving it shortly at home, I think. And it's also available on the TV Key Facts platform, of course. Thank you for watching. And from us, it's goodbye for now. See you.
See you.